Well, let's see if I can say this without it coming across as Git GUD. I think there is a tendency in some game development to optimize away all friction, to remove all friction points from a game. And there's a point at which this is very useful and it's good for accessibility, and there's a point at which it becomes a detrimental thing for your game. If we extend this to the most extreme example, everything in a game is some sort of friction. It's some sort of block between where you are and where you're going. Combat is friction. So if you optimize away combat, then you're not really left with anything. If the combat just does it for you, then you're not left with any sort of gameplay there. And this is really what I'm getting at. At the extremes, overly smoothing out the experience is going to remove things that provide extra interest and extra attachment to your game. Let me give you an example. When you're playing a game like Dragon Age Origins, you are picking up a lot of junk loot, a lot of things that are basically gold in a less convenient form. So you're getting old swords and lots of things that have no particular use for you except to be something that you can take to a store and convert into money. What you could imagine doing is optimizing that a little bit. Auto sorting things into a junk tab and letting you quickly sell all junk when you get back to a store. So that seems like a pretty good optimization. You are still engaging with this treasure out in the world, but you're not having to deal with the fact that in your store you're going click, sell, click, sell, click, sell, click, sell. So that's the difference between the way that loot worked in Dragon Age Origins and the way that it worked in Dragon Age 2. In Dragon Age 2, a lot of this flavor loot was just considered junk, and it moved onto a junk tab, and you could sell it all at once. I would argue that that is a good optimization. You haven't removed the second step, but you've smoothed out that experience. Now, you could, I think, very legitimately argue that calling it junk undermines its purpose within the game. You might be better off having them called valuables, and rather than having it be old rusty sword, make it be intricate sword. But we could take this one step further. Rather than having me pick up this junk or these valuables, you could just get rid of it completely. Just have gold. Just have gold out in the world. And that's the point where I feel that you cross the line. Because now what you've done is you, in the name of smoothing out the experience, in the name of reducing friction, you have removed flavor. You have removed an opportunity to strengthen your setting. In Dragon Age Origins, when you pick up a gemstone, that feels much more impactful than it does to pick up the equivalent amount of gold, even though it's actually arguably slightly worse because you actually have to go back to town and sell that to convert it into actual gold. And that's not even something that has any real lore attached to it. If, on the other hand, you're finding something like Templar secrets, which, again, is a valuable that you could convert into gold, now you're getting something even more impactful. You're establishing that in this world, there is something called Templar secrets. Templars obviously must have secrets. It means that the area you're in where you're picking these things up must have had Templars in the vicinity. Even though it's just a valuable, it's just gold in a different form, you're now doing world building just with your treasure. So as we look to improve the experience of our game, as we look to streamline our experiences, as we look to make our games more accessible, we have to be careful not to accidentally streamline away the fun bits. And it isn't always necessarily obvious where the fun bits lie, but fun often exists in those friction points where a little bit of extra work is what actually makes it interesting. Annoyingly, this is a bit of a moving target. As we've moved through generations of consoles, as we have shifted back and forth between dominant platforms, between PC, between consoles, between mobile. The tolerance for friction in different places has moved around. There are places where people have become very reluctant to accept much in the way of friction. Back in the day, we didn't have automated mapping in games. The expectation was part of the fun, part of the interest was to use a piece of graph paper to draw your own map. That would be kind of a non-starter on any AAA game these days. The expectation is the game is going to keep track of where you have and haven't been as you go. As you find the places where friction is actually part of the experience, part of what makes the game special, part of what makes the game fun, keep in mind as you move from game to game to game, bits of friction that used to be great fun might have fallen out of vogue, and you might have to re-examine in order to keep your game relevant. Special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you're interested in becoming a member, there's a link to that down in the description. We have merch. This is the High Tea on the High Seas hoodie. There is a shelf below this video if you're interested in picking something up. What are some games you've played where they've optimized away all of the interesting bits? And what are some games that maybe could do with a little bit more smoothing out? Let's have a conversation about that down in the comments. I will see you again soon. Thank you.